The lure of the unknown had always beckoned Anna. From the first moment she read about the uncharted cave system hidden deep within the Appalachian Mountains, she felt an irresistible pull. The cave was rumored to hold untold treasures and ancient mysteries waiting to be unearthed. The legend of the lost cave had been passed down through generations, whispered in hushed tones among those brave enough to venture into the heart of the wilderness. It spoke of a place where time stood still, where the spirits of the past lingered, guarding their secrets with a vengeance. Anna, a fearless leader with countless expeditions under her belt, gathered her team: Jake, the seasoned geologist; Mia, the enthusiastic spelunker; and Tom, the skeptical historian. Each had their reasons for embarking on this perilous journey. Jake sought to study the cave's unique geological formations. Mia craved the thrill of exploring uncharted territory, and Tom hoped to uncover artifacts that would rewrite history. The group set out early one morning, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. As they trekked through dense forests and rugged terrain, an eerie silence settled over them. The birdsong and rustling leaves seemed to fade away the closer they got to their destination, as if the forest itself was holding its breath in anticipation. According to the map, the entrance should be just ahead, Anna said, consulting the ancient parchment that had led them this far. The map was a relic itself, covered in cryptic symbols and faded lines that hinted at the cave's elusive location. They reached a small clearing where the mouth of the cave gaped like a yawning chasm in the earth. A chill ran down Anna's spine as she stared into the inky blackness. The cave seemed to exude a malevolent aura, daring them to enter. "Ready?" Anna asked, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her. Jake nodded, adjusting his headlamp. "Let's do this." Mia grinned, her excitement palpable. "I've been waiting for this my whole life." Tom hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he studied the cave entrance. "Something doesn't feel right," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Anna ignored the nagging doubt that Tom's words stirred within her. "Stay close and keep your lights on. We don't know what we'll find in there." One by one, they descended into the cave, their headlamps casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air grew colder, and the sound of their footsteps echoed ominously in the confined space. The walls were adorned with strange markings, etched into the stone by unknown hands. "What do you make of these, Tom?" Anna asked, pointing to the symbols. Tom examined them closely, his brow furrowing. "These markings are unlike anything I've ever seen. They don't match any known language or script. It's almost as if they're meant to convey a warning." As they ventured deeper, the passageway widened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. Ancient artifacts littered the ground, broken pottery, rusted weapons, and fragments of bone. Mia picked up a piece of pottery, her eyes wide with wonder. "These must be thousands of years old," she said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. A sudden bone-chilling draft swept through the chamber, extinguishing their headlamps. Darkness enveloped them, and panic surged through the group. "Stay calm," Anna called out, fumbling for her spare flashlight. She managed to turn it on, the weak beam barely penetrating the oppressive blackness. "Everyone okay?" Jake's voice came from somewhere to her left. "Yeah, just a little freaked out." Mia's voice was shaky. "What was that?" Tom's reply was grim. "I think we've awakened something." Anna's heart pounded as she scanned the chamber, her flashlight revealing fleeting glimpses of ghostly apparitions. The air grew heavy with an overwhelming sense of dread. They were not alone in the cave. Something ancient and vengeful had been disturbed, and it was watching them. "Let's keep moving," Anna said, her voice trembling. "We need to find a way out before it's too late." As they pressed on, deeper into the bowels of the cave, the whispers of the past grew louder, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. The explorers had answered the call of the abyss, and now there was no turning back. The air grew heavier as they ventured further into the cave, their breaths creating clouds of mist in the cold, stagnant atmosphere. The narrow passageways twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the mountain. Anna's flashlight illuminated the rough, damp walls, revealing more of the strange markings etched into the stone. "Tom, any idea what these could mean?" Anna asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Tom examined the symbols again, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns. "These markings, they're different from the ones we saw earlier. They look more like warnings, perhaps even a curse." Mia shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Do you think the spirits are trying to communicate with us?" Jake scoffed, though his eyes darted nervously around the darkened tunnel. "Spirits? Come on, Mia. There has to be a logical explanation for all this." Before Mia could respond, a low, haunting whisper echoed through the passageway. The sound was barely audible, but it sent chills down their spines. "Did you hear that?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. Anna nodded, her grip tightening on her flashlight. "Stay close. Whatever it is, we need to stick together." The whispers grew louder as they moved deeper into the cave, forming an eerie chorus of disembodied voices. The sound seemed to come from all directions, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. Tom, squinting into the darkness, suddenly stopped. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a section of the wall covered in fresher markings. "These symbols are different. They look like they were made more recently." Anna leaned in closer, studying the carvings. "What do they say?" Tom hesitated, his face pale. "It's hard to translate exactly, but it's something like, 'Do not disturb the rest of the fallen. Their wrath knows no bounds.'" Jake laughed nervously. "Great. So we've stumbled into some ancient curse, just what we needed." The atmosphere grew more oppressive with each step, the walls seeming to close in around them. Anna's heart pounded in her chest, her instincts screaming that they were being watched. She glanced back at her team, their faces mirroring her own fear. The tunnel opened up into another chamber, this one smaller and more confined. The floor was littered with bones and tattered remnants of clothing. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, upon which lay an intricately carved idol. Tom approached the pedestal, his eyes wide with fascination. "This must be a relic from the ancient civilization that lived here," he said, reaching out to touch the idol. "Tom, wait," Anna warned, but it was too late. The moment Tom's fingers brushed the idol, the chamber was filled with a deafening roar. The walls shook, and the ground beneath them trembled violently. A cold wind whipped through the chamber, extinguishing their lights once again. The whispers turned into anguished wails, the voices of the dead crying out in fury. Anna fumbled with her flashlight, her hands shaking. "We need to get out of here now." But the tunnel they had come through was no longer there. In its place was a solid wall of rock. Panic surged through the group as they realized they were trapped. "What do we do?" Mia cried, her voice rising in hysteria. Anna forced herself to stay calm, her mind racing for a solution. There has to be another way out. We need to find it before the spirits do. The ground continued to shake, and the wails grew louder, echoing in their ears. The shadows in the chamber seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing like living creatures. Jake pointed to a narrow passageway on the other side of the chamber. There! It looks like it leads somewhere. Let's go! They hurried toward the passageway, the shadows nipping at their heels. The air grew colder with each step, and the oppressive feeling of being watched intensified. As they moved deeper into the new tunnel, the whispers began to fade, replaced by an eerie silence. The walls were smoother here, the markings more elaborate and sinister. Tom lagged behind, glancing back at the chamber they had just escaped. "I don't think we were supposed to find this place," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Anna's flashlight flickered, casting fleeting glimpses of the tunnel ahead. "We're in too deep now. We have to keep moving and find a way out." But as they pressed on, the oppressive silence was broken by a new sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the very depths of the cave. The explorers exchanged fearful glances, knowing that whatever awaited them ahead was far more terrifying than anything they had encountered so far. The narrow passageway twisted and turned, leading the explorers deeper into the labyrinthine cave system. The oppressive silence weighed heavily on them, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing through the tunnels. Anna's flashlight beam wavered as her grip tightened, the sense of being watched growing stronger with each step. "How much further do you think it goes?" Mia asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm not sure," Anna replied, glancing at the map. "But we have to keep moving. We can't stay here." The passageway widened suddenly, opening into a vast underground chamber. Their flashlights revealed towering stalagmites and stalactites, glistening in the faint light. The floor was littered with ancient artifacts, broken pottery, rusted weapons, and scattered bones. "Look at this place," Jake breathed, his voice filled with awe. "It's like a tomb." Tom moved forward cautiously, his eyes scanning the chamber. "These artifacts, they look like they belong to different time periods. It's as if people from various eras have been here." Mia picked up a fragment of pottery, turning it over in her hands. "This must be thousands of years old," she said, her voice tinged with reverence. A sudden chill swept through the chamber, extinguishing their lights once again. The darkness was suffocating, and the temperature plummeted. The sound of soft, mournful whispers filled the air, growing louder and more insistent. "Everyone stay close," Anna ordered, her voice trembling. She fumbled with her flashlight, finally managing to turn it back on. The weak beam cut through the darkness, revealing ghostly apparitions drifting through the chamber. The apparitions were translucent, their forms shifting and shimmering like smoke. They moved with an eerie grace, their faces twisted in expressions of sorrow and rage. Each one seemed to be reliving a moment of anguish, their whispers forming a haunting chorus. "Do you see that?" Jake whispered, his voice shaking. They're trying to tell us something." Tom stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the apparitions. "They're spirits of those who died here," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and fascination. "They're trapped, unable to move on." One of the spirits, a tall figure clad in tattered robes, drifted closer to them. Its eyes, hollow and lifeless, seemed to bore into Anna's soul. It raised a skeletal hand, pointing toward the far end of the chamber. Anna followed the spirit's gaze, her flashlight illuminating a hidden alcove. Inside, she saw a small, intricately carved chest. "There," she said, her voice barely audible. "There must be something important in that chest." As they approached the alcove, the whispers grew louder, the spirits becoming more agitated. The temperature continued to drop, and their breaths formed clouds of mist in the freezing air. Anna reached for the chest, her fingers trembling. As she opened it, a blinding light filled the chamber, and the spirit's wails reached a deafening crescendo. Inside the chest lay a collection of ancient scrolls and a small, blood-stained dagger. Tom carefully picked up one of the scrolls, his eyes widening as he read the faded text. "These are records of the sacrifices made here," he said, his voice shaking. "They document the rituals performed to appease the spirits." The realization that they had uncovered the source of the cave's malevolent presence sent a wave of dread through the group. The spirits, now fully aware of their intrusion, began to close in on them, their faces contorted with rage. "We need to leave," Anna said urgently. "Now!" As they turned to flee, the ground beneath them began to tremble violently. Stalactites crashed down from the ceiling, and the walls shook with an otherworldly force. The spirits' wails grew louder, their forms becoming more solid and menacing. Jake stumbled, his flashlight slipping from his grasp. "I can't see," he shouted, panic rising in his voice. Anna grabbed his arm, pulling him to his feet. "Keep moving. We have to find a way out." The tunnel they had entered through was now blocked by fallen debris, leaving them with no choice but to press deeper into the cave. The spirits pursued them relentlessly, their anguished cries echoing through the dark. In the distance, Anna spotted a faint glimmer of light. "There! That might be an exit," she called out, leading the way. But as they ran toward the light, the ground gave way beneath them, sending them tumbling into a hidden chasm. They landed in a smaller, more confined chamber, the walls adorned with fresh markings that seemed to glow with an eerie, otherworldly light. Anna struggled to her feet, her heart pounding. "Is everyone okay?" Jake groaned, rubbing his shoulder. "I think so, just a little bruised." Mia looked around, her eyes wide with fear. "Where are we now?" Tom examined the glowing markings, his face pale. "These symbols, they're a curse. We've awakened something ancient and powerful. We need to find a way out before it's too late." The chamber's oppressive silence was broken by a new sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the very depths of the cave. The explorers exchanged fearful glances, knowing that whatever awaited them ahead was far more terrifying than anything they had encountered so far. The growl reverberated through the chamber, sending a shiver down Anna's spine. She motioned for the others to stay quiet and pressed her ear to the cold stone floor. The sound grew louder, resonating from a tunnel on the opposite side of the chamber. "We need to move quickly," she whispered. "Whatever it is, it's getting closer." They scrambled to their feet, their flashlights flickering as they advanced cautiously toward the tunnel. The air grew thicker, and the oppressive feeling of being watched intensified. Jake took the lead, his geological expertise guiding them through the narrow passageways. As they ventured deeper, the growling morphed into a series of guttural, inhuman noises that echoed off the walls. The tunnel opened into another cavern, this one smaller and filled with the sickly green light emanating from phosphorescent fungi clinging to the walls. Anna's breath caught in her throat as her flashlight beam revealed the source of the noise. A hulking figure stood at the far end of the cavern, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. It was a monstrous amalgamation of human and beast, its skin leathery and covered in matted hair, with elongated limbs and claws that scraped the ground. Jake froze, his eyes widening in terror. "What the hell is that?" The creature let out a deafening roar and charged toward them, its movements disturbingly swift for its size. Panic surged through the group as they scattered, trying to avoid the creature's path. Jake, separated from the others, found himself cornered against a rocky outcrop. The creature loomed over him, its breath hot and rancid. He fumbled for his climbing axe, but before he could defend himself, the creature swiped at him, its claws raking across his chest. "Jake!" Anna screamed, her heart pounding. She grabbed a loose rock and hurled it at the creature, striking it on the side of the head. The creature snarled, momentarily distracted, giving Jake a chance to scramble away. Anna and Mia rushed to Jake's side, helping him to his feet. Blood seeped through his shirt, and he winced in pain. "We have to get out of here," Anna said urgently. "This way." They stumbled through a narrow crevice, the creature's roars echoing behind them. The passageway twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the labyrinth. The walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder and more oppressive. Mia glanced back, her eyes wide with fear. "Do you think it's still following us?" Anna shook her head, trying to keep her composure. "I don't know, but we can't stop. We need to find a way out." They emerged into a smaller chamber, the air thick with an otherworldly energy. The walls were covered in strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with a malevolent light. Tom studied the markings, his face pale. "These symbols are a form of protection," he said, his voice trembling. "They were meant to keep the spirits contained. We've broken the seal, and now they're free." A sense of dread washed over Anna as she realized the gravity of their situation. "How do we fix it?" Tom shook his head, despair etched on his face. "I don't know. The rituals are ancient and complex. We don't have the knowledge or the time to perform them." Jake, leaning heavily on Mia, spoke through gritted teeth. "Then we need to find another way out. Fast." They pressed on, the tunnel growing narrower and more treacherous. The ground beneath them shifted, and the air became thick with a noxious odor. As they rounded a corner, they were met with a horrific sight: the remains of previous explorers, their skeletal hands reaching out in eternal desperation. Mia gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, they didn't make it out." Anna steeled herself, pushing past the macabre display. "We won't end up like them. We have to keep moving." The tunnel led them to another chamber, this one dominated by a large stone altar in the center. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the oppressive energy was almost suffocating. The walls were lined with ancient runes, their meaning lost to time. Tom approached the altar, his eyes scanning the runes. "This is the source of the curse," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The altar was used for sacrificial rituals to appease the spirits. Anna's heart raced as she realized the significance of the altar. "Is there any way to reverse the curse?" Tom hesitated, his face pale. "There might be, but it would require a sacrifice, a life for a life." Jake, still clutching his wounded chest, shook his head. "No way. There has to be another way." Before they could contemplate their next move, the chamber was filled with a bone-chilling howl. The creature had found them, its eyes glowing with an unholy fire. It advanced slowly, savoring the terror it instilled in its prey. Anna's mind raced as she looked around the chamber, searching for an escape. Her eyes landed on a narrow passageway, partially obscured by fallen rocks. There! We can make it through there! They scrambled toward the passageway, the creature's roars growing louder and more frantic. As they squeezed through the narrow opening, the tunnel began to collapse behind them, sealing the creature inside the chamber. The tunnel led them to a series of winding passageways, the air growing fresher with each step. Their relief was short-lived, however, as the oppressive presence of the spirits continued to haunt them. Anna's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into darkness once more. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, as if the spirits were closing in on them. "We can't stop now," Anna said, her voice trembling. "We have to keep moving." They pressed on, the tunnel twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they navigated the labyrinth, their senses heightened by the constant threat of danger. As they rounded a final corner, they were met with a sliver of light shining through a crack in the rock. Their hearts lifted with hope as they realized they had found an exit. "Come on," Anna urged, her voice filled with determination. "We're almost there." They squeezed through the narrow opening, emerging into the cool night air. The stars twinkled above them, a stark contrast to the darkness they had left behind. Jake collapsed to the ground, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We made it. We actually made it." But as they caught their breath, the whispers of the spirits continued to echo in their minds, a haunting reminder that their ordeal was far from over. The ancient beings they had awakened would not rest until their wrath was satisfied. The explorers lay on the forest floor, gasping for breath. The cool night air felt like a blessing, but the haunting whispers of the spirits still lingered in their minds, a chilling reminder of the cave's malevolent presence. Anna knew they were far from safe. They had escaped the physical confines of the cave, but its curse had followed them into the world above. "We need to find shelter," Anna said, her voice steady but strained. "Somewhere we can regroup and figure out what to do next." Jake, clutching his wounded chest, nodded weakly. "There's an old ranger station not too far from here. We can head there." With Jake leading the way, they stumbled through the dense forest, the shadows seeming to reach out and grasp at them. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs set their nerves on edge, the oppressive sense of being watched never leaving them. Mia walked close to Anna, her eyes darting around fearfully. "Do you think the spirits can follow us out here?" Mia asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't know," Anna admitted, "but we have to keep moving." The ranger station was a small, dilapidated cabin nestled in a clearing. The windows were boarded up, and the door hung crookedly on its hinges. It was far from ideal, but it offered a temporary refuge from the horrors they had faced underground. Anna pushed open the door, the wood creaking loudly. Inside, the cabin was musty and cold, but it provided a welcome respite. They collapsed onto the floor, their bodies and minds exhausted. Tom examined Jake's wound, his expression grim. "We need to clean this and bandage it properly. It's deep, but I think he'll be okay if we treat it now." Mia found a dusty first aid kit in one of the cabinets and handed it to Tom. As he tended to Jake's wound, Anna couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over them. The whispers were quieter now, but they still lingered, a constant reminder of the spirit's presence. "Does anyone else feel different?" Anna asked, looking around at her companions. "Like the cave did something to us?" Mia nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "I feel like I'm being watched, even now, and I keep hearing those whispers." Jake, his face pale from pain, nodded in agreement. "It's like the cave got inside our heads. I can't stop thinking about it." Tom, finishing the bandage on Jake's wound, sat back and sighed. "The cave and its spirits have a hold on us. We've disturbed something ancient and powerful, and it's not going to let us go easily." Anna knew they couldn't stay in the cabin forever. They needed a plan, a way to break the curse and free themselves from the spirit's grasp. But first, they needed rest. The events of the day had taken their toll, and they needed to regain their strength. "Get some rest," Anna said, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll figure out our next move in the morning." They settled down on the floor, using their backpacks as makeshift pillows. The cabin was eerily silent, the only sound the occasional creak of the wooden structure. Despite their exhaustion, sleep did not come easily. The whispers of the spirits and the memories of the cave haunted their dreams. Anna awoke with a start in the middle of the night, her heart pounding. The cabin was pitch dark, and for a moment, she thought she was back in the cave. She reached for her flashlight, but a sudden, overwhelming feeling of dread washed over her. "Anna," a voice whispered, soft and chilling. She turned, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The figure of a woman stood in the corner of the room, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Her form shimmered and flickered like a mirage. "Who are you?" Anna demanded, her voice trembling. The woman's voice was barely audible, a faint echo. "We are the forgotten, the lost. You have awakened us, and now we seek retribution." Anna's mind raced, trying to comprehend the apparition's words. "What do you want from us?" The woman's form began to fade, her voice growing fainter. "The curse must be lifted. Return what was taken, or suffer our wrath." Before Anna could ask anything more, the apparition vanished, leaving her alone in the darkness. She sat there, her mind reeling. The spirits wanted something returned. But what? And how could they possibly find it in the vast, uncharted cave system? The rest of the night passed in a blur of fitful sleep and anxious waking moments. When morning finally came, the weak light of dawn filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting eerie shadows across the cabin. Anna gathered the group together, her face set with determination. "I saw one of the spirits last night. She said we need to return what was taken to lift the curse." Tom frowned. "But we don't even know what they're talking about. There's so much down there. How do we know what they want us to return?" Anna shook her head. "I don't know, but we have to try. We can't keep running from this. If we don't find a way to appease the spirits, they'll haunt us forever." Jake, wincing as he moved, nodded. "Anna's right. We need to go back." Mia's eyes filled with fear, but she didn't argue. "Okay, but we need a plan. We can't just wander around in the dark again." Tom retrieved the map from his backpack and spread it out on the floor. "We need to retrace our steps. Maybe there's something we missed, something that can give us a clue." As they studied the map, a sense of resolve settled over the group. They were scared, but they knew they had no other choice. The spirits would not rest until the curse was lifted, and neither could they. With renewed determination, they prepared to return to the cave, ready to face the horrors that awaited them. The whispers in the dark had led them to the brink of madness, but they would not let fear defeat them. They would uncover the secrets of the cave and find a way to break the curse, no matter the cost. The journey back to the cave was fraught with tension. Each step they took seemed to carry the weight of their dread, and the oppressive feeling of being watched never left them. The forest, once a place of natural beauty, now felt like a maze of shadows and unseen eyes. Anna led the way, her mind racing with the spirit's cryptic message. The others followed closely, their faces pale and drawn. Jake, despite his injury, moved with determination, his jaw set in grim resolve. Mia's eyes darted nervously around, and Tom clutched the map as if it were a lifeline. When they finally reached the cave entrance, a chill ran down Anna's spine. The mouth of the cave gaped open like a maw, ready to swallow them whole. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Everyone ready?" she asked, her voice steady but low. They nodded in unison, and one by one, they descended back into the darkness. The cave seemed even more foreboding than before, its tunnels twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. The whispers began almost immediately, a soft murmur that echoed off the walls and set their nerves on edge. Anna led them through the familiar passages, retracing their steps to the chamber where they had first encountered the ancient artifacts. As they entered the vast space, the air grew colder, and the oppressive energy thickened. "The altar should be in the next chamber," Tom said, consulting the map. "That's where the records indicated the sacrifices took place." They moved cautiously, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The chamber they entered was smaller, more confined, with a large stone altar dominating the center. The air was thick with the scent of decay and an almost palpable sense of dread. Anna approached the altar, her flashlight illuminating the bloodstains that marred its surface. The sight sent a shiver down her spine. This was a place of death, where lives had been offered to appease the spirits. Tom studied the runes carved into the altar, his face pale. "These symbols, they speak of sacrifices made to quell the wrath of the spirits. Human lives were offered here." Mia's voice trembled as she spoke. "Do you think the spirits want another sacrifice?" Anna shook her head, her mind racing. "I don't think that's the answer. The spirit said we need to return what was taken. There has to be something here, something that was stolen or disturbed." Jake, wincing from his injury, moved closer to the altar. "What about the scrolls we found? They were in that chest, right next to the altar." Tom nodded, pulling the ancient scrolls from his backpack. "These records document the rituals. Maybe there's a clue here." As Tom unrolled the scrolls, Anna's flashlight flickered, casting fleeting glimpses of the ancient text. The runes were complex and difficult to decipher, but Tom's expertise allowed him to piece together their meaning. "It speaks of a dagger," Tom said, his voice filled with awe. "A ceremonial blade used in the sacrifices. It was considered a sacred artifact meant to bind the spirits and keep them at rest." Anna's eyes widened as she remembered the blood-stained dagger they had found in the chest. "The dagger. That must be what we need to return." Mia retrieved the dagger from her pack, its blade glinting ominously in the dim light. "But where do we place it?" Tom pointed to a small indentation on the altar's surface, perfectly shaped to hold the dagger. "There. It's meant to be placed here, to complete the ritual." As Anna moved to place the dagger in the indentation, the chamber filled with a sudden, bone-chilling howl. The ground trembled, and the walls seemed to close in around them. The spirits, angered by their presence, began to manifest, their ghostly forms swirling in the shadows. "Do it, Anna!" Jake shouted, his voice filled with urgency. With trembling hands, Anna placed the dagger in the indentation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a blinding light erupted from the altar, and the spirits' howls turned into anguished wails. The ground shook violently, and the air grew colder, as if the very essence of the cave was reacting to the ritual. The light intensified, enveloping the chamber in a radiant glow. The spirits, their forms twisted in agony, began to dissolve, their cries fading into the distance. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and peace. As the light dimmed, Anna fell to her knees, exhausted but relieved. The dagger lay in its rightful place, the bloodstains on the altar fading away. The chamber, once filled with the presence of malevolent spirits, now felt empty and still. Jake approached Anna, helping her to her feet. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice hushed. Anna nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "I think so. We returned what was taken, and the spirits are at rest." Tom examined the altar, his face thoughtful. "The curse has been lifted. The spirits wanted their sacred artifact returned, and we've done that. They can finally move on." Mia, her eyes filled with tears, hugged Anna tightly. "We did it. We actually did it." The group stood together, their bond strengthened by the harrowing ordeal they had survived. The cave, once a place of terror, now seemed like a tomb for the forgotten souls who had finally found peace. As they made their way back through the tunnels, the oppressive feeling of being watched was gone. The whispers had ceased, replaced by an eerie silence that felt almost welcoming. They emerged into the daylight, the forest now a place of refuge rather than menace. Anna took a deep breath, the fresh air filling her lungs. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "We broke the curse." The others nodded, their faces reflecting the same sense of relief and accomplishment. They had faced the horrors of the cave and emerged victorious, their spirits unbroken. But as they walked away from the cave, the memory of their ordeal lingered. The ancient beings they had awakened were at rest, but the experience had left its mark. They would never forget the haunted cave system and the spirits that had called it home. And they knew that some mysteries were best left undisturbed, their secrets buried deep within the earth. The relief of escaping the cave was short-lived. As they trudged back through the forest toward the ranger station, a palpable tension hung in the air. The whispers had ceased, but the psychological strain of their ordeal had left deep scars on each of them. Exhaustion and fear gnawed at their nerves, and the unity they had shared began to fray at the edges. "We need to rest," Anna said as they reached the cabin. "We can't make any rational decisions while we're this worn out." Jake nodded, wincing with every step. "I agree. Let's get some sleep and regroup in the morning." As they settled into the cramped, dusty cabin, the atmosphere grew thick with unspoken words and mistrust. Tom's eyes constantly darted to the dagger in Mia's possession, and Mia herself clutched it protectively, as if it were a lifeline. Night fell, and the forest outside the cabin grew silent. The oppressive darkness seemed to press in on them, and the whispers of the spirits echoed faintly in their minds. Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. They had broken the curse, but something still felt off. She turned to see Mia sitting by the window, the dagger resting in her lap. "Mia, you okay?" Anna asked softly. Mia's eyes were wide, haunted. "I keep thinking about what we saw down there. The sacrifices, the spirits. What if we didn't do enough? What if they come back?" Anna sat up, her face serious. "We did what we had to do. The spirits are at rest now. We need to believe that." But doubt had already taken root. As the night wore on, the tension among the group reached a breaking point. Tom, unable to sleep, paced the room restlessly. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said, his voice tense. "That dagger, it's an artifact of immense historical value. We can't just leave it here." Jake, leaning against the wall, glared at Tom. "You think we should take it? After everything that's happened? Are you out of your mind?" Tom's eyes flashed with a mix of determination and greed. "It's more than just a relic. It's a piece of history. We could learn so much from it. Besides, it might be worth a fortune." Anna intervened, her voice firm. "We're not taking the dagger. We returned it to its rightful place for a reason. We can't risk awakening the spirits again." But the seed of discord had been planted. Throughout the night, Tom continued to argue, his desire for the dagger clashing with the group's fear of the curse. The cabin became a battleground of words, each member's paranoia and exhaustion fueling the conflict. In the early hours of the morning, Anna awoke to find Tom rummaging through Mia's belongings. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Tom turned, the dagger in his hand, his eyes wild. "We need this. Don't you see? It's our only proof of what happened down there." Before Anna could react, Mia lunged at Tom, her face twisted in anger and fear. "Give it back." "We're not taking it with us." A struggle ensued, chaotic and desperate. Jake tried to intervene, but his injury slowed him down. Tom, fueled by his obsession, pushed Mia away, sending her crashing into a wall. The dagger clattered to the floor, and Anna quickly snatched it up. "Enough!" Anna shouted, her voice echoing through the cabin. "This dagger is staying here. We're not taking any more chances." Tom, breathing heavily, glared at Anna. "You're making a mistake. We need that dagger." But Anna's resolve was unshakable. "Number, we've already risked too much. We need to leave it here and get out of this place." Reluctantly, the group agreed, but the betrayal had left a deep wound. Trust was shattered, and the sense of unity they had once shared was gone. As they packed their belongings and prepared to leave, the oppressive weight of their ordeal hung over them like a dark cloud. As they left the cabin and made their way through the forest, the morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the ground. The path ahead was uncertain, and the memory of the haunted cave system would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Anna walked at the front of the group, her thoughts heavy with the burden of leadership. She knew they had escaped the cave, but the true cost of their survival was only beginning to reveal itself. The betrayal had left them fractured, and the spirits they had awakened would forever linger in their minds. As they emerged from the forest, the sun rising on the horizon, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. The ancient beings they had disturbed had been put to rest, but the darkness they had encountered would remain with them, a shadow that could never be fully escaped. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the bond they had shared was now tainted by mistrust and fear. The haunted cave system had left its mark on them, and they would carry its legacy with them, a reminder of the horrors that lay beneath the earth. The forest gave way to a rugged landscape, the path to safety still uncertain. The betrayal had fractured the group's trust, but survival demanded they move forward together. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows, the oppressive feeling of being watched began to creep back. It was as if the cave's malevolent presence had followed them, refusing to let go. "We need to find another way out of this area," Anna said, trying to project confidence despite the growing dread gnawing at her insides. Tom, still sullen from the altercation, mumbled under his breath, but followed without argument. Jake, his injury bandaged but still painful, moved with determination, and Mia stayed close to Anna, her fear palpable. As they navigated the unfamiliar terrain, they stumbled upon a hidden pathway, partially obscured by overgrown foliage. The path led them deeper into the forest, away from the cave, but the sense of foreboding only grew stronger. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake violently, throwing them off balance. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the forest, reverberating through their bones. Anna's heart raced as she realized the spirits were not at rest. They were coming for them. "We need to move now," Anna shouted, urging the others forward. They sprinted down the path, the ground quaking beneath their feet. The roar grew louder, closer, as if the very earth was tearing itself apart to unleash the spirit's wrath. The path twisted and turned, leading them to a narrow ravine with a rickety wooden bridge spanning the gap. "Go!" "One at a time," Anna ordered, her voice strained with urgency. Tom, driven by fear and desperation, was the first to cross. The bridge swayed dangerously, creaking under his weight. He reached the other side and waved frantically for the others to follow. Mia went next, her steps quick and nimble. The bridge groaned but held. Jake stepped onto the bridge, his face contorted with pain. Anna followed closely behind, her eyes scanning the ravine for any signs of danger. Halfway across, the roar intensified, and the ground erupted in a shower of dirt and rocks. A massive, shadowy figure emerged from the forest, its eyes glowing with malevolent fire. The bridge shuddered violently as the creature approached, its claws raking the ground. Jake stumbled, his grip on the ropes slipping. Anna lunged forward, grabbing his arm and pulling him to his feet. "Keep moving," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the deafening roar. They reached the other side, just as the creature's claws slashed through the bridge, tearing it apart. The wooden planks splintered and fell into the ravine, leaving the creature stranded on the opposite side, its eyes blazing with fury. "We need to find shelter," Anna said, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Something to protect us from that thing." Tom pointed to a rocky outcrop in the distance, partially hidden by dense foliage. "There. That might give us some cover." They raced toward the outcrop, the creature's roars echoing in their ears. The outcrop formed a small cave, barely big enough for them to squeeze inside. They huddled together, their breaths mingling in the confined space. Anna peered out, watching the creature as it paced back and forth on the other side of the ravine. "It can't reach us here, but we're not safe yet. We need to find a way to stop it." Tom, his face pale with fear, shook his head. "How do we stop something like that? It's not human." Jake, clutching his wound, spoke through gritted teeth. "There has to be something. Some way to weaken it. Mia, her eyes wide with realization, pulled out the map. "Look here," she said, pointing to a series of markings. "These symbols match the ones we saw in the cave. There's a ritual, a way to bind the spirits and banish them." Anna studied the map, her mind racing. "We need to perform the ritual, but we're going to need the dagger." Tom's eyes widened. "The dagger's back at the cabin. We'll never make it there and back in time." Anna's jaw set with determination. "We have no choice. Jake and I will go back for the dagger. Mia, you and Tom stay here and prepare the ritual." Jake protested weakly, but Anna silenced him with a look. "You're hurt, but you're the only one who knows the way back. We can do this, Jake." Reluctantly, Jake agreed, and they set off, leaving Tom and Mia to ready the ritual site. The journey back to the cabin was fraught with danger, the forest alive with the restless spirits. The creatures' roars followed them, a constant reminder of the peril they faced. When they reached the cabin, it was eerily silent. Anna quickly located the dagger and turned to leave, but a sudden coldness gripped her, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "You should not have come back," a voice hissed, filled with malice. Anna spun around to see the spectral figure of the woman from the cave, her eyes burning with anger. "We did what you asked," Anna said, her voice trembling. "Why are you still haunting us?" The spirit's form flickered, her voice a haunting wail. "The curse cannot be undone. The sacrifice must be made." Before Anna could respond, the spirit vanished, leaving a chilling silence in her wake. She and Jake hurried back to the outcrop, the dagger clutched tightly in her hand. When they returned, Mia and Tom had prepared the ritual site. The symbols had been drawn in the dirt, and the ancient scrolls were laid out before them. "We're ready," Mia said, her voice shaking. "We just need the dagger." Anna handed her the dagger, and together they began the ritual. The air grew thick with energy, the symbols glowing faintly. As they chanted the ancient words, the ground trembled, and the creature roared in fury from across the ravine. Suddenly, the earth split open, and tendrils of darkness erupted from the ground, wrapping around the creature. It howled in agony, thrashing wildly as the ritual bound it. The tendrils tightened, pulling the creature into the earth, its roars fading into the distance. The ground closed up, and the oppressive energy lifted, leaving the forest eerily silent. The ritual had worked. The creature was banished, and the spirits were finally at rest. Anna collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. "We did it. It's over." Jake, his face pale and drawn, nodded. "We survived." Mia and Tom hugged each other, tears of relief streaming down their faces. The ordeal had left them scarred, but they had emerged victorious. As they made their way back to the cabin, the forest seemed less menacing, the shadows less threatening. The haunted cave system was behind them, but the memory of their ordeal would stay with them forever. They had faced their greatest fears and survived, but the cost had been high. Anna knew that they would never be the same. The bonds forged in the depths of the cave had been tested and broken, but they had emerged stronger, their spirits unbroken. They had faced the darkness and come out the other side, forever changed by the horrors they had encountered. And as they walked away from the forest, the memory of the haunted cave system and the spirits they had awakened would stay with them, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the earth. The group emerged from the forest, battered but alive. The haunted cave system was now a distant nightmare, but the reality of their situation was still dire. They had managed to banish the creature and quiet the spirits, but they were far from civilization, and Jake's injury needed proper medical attention. As they trudged through the underbrush, the oppressive feeling began to lift, replaced by a tentative sense of hope. The sunlight filtering through the trees felt like a promise of safety and normalcy. Anna led the way, her senses alert for any signs of danger, while Mia and Tom supported Jake, whose face was pale and drawn from the pain. "We need to find help soon," Anna said, her voice firm but weary. "Jake can't keep going like this." Jake managed a weak smile. "I'm tougher than I look. Just need to keep moving." They followed a narrow deer trail that led them to a wider path, which eventually brought them to an old dirt road. The road looked seldom used, but it was a sign of civilization, a lifeline to safety. As they walked along the road, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. The betrayal, the horrors they had faced, and the rituals they had performed weighed on their minds. Each step felt like a victory, but the specter of the cave lingered in their thoughts. Anna spotted a small cabin up ahead, smoke curling from its chimney. "There's someone up ahead. Maybe they can help us." They approached the cabin cautiously, not wanting to startle whoever lived there. Anna knocked on the door, and a moment later, an elderly man opened it, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the ragged group. "Good Lord, what happened to you folks?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "We were exploring the caves and got lost," Anna explained, avoiding the more supernatural aspects of their ordeal. "Our friend is injured. Can you help us?" The man nodded, opening the door wider. Come in. Let's get your friend patched up." The inside of the cabin was warm and cozy, a stark contrast to the cold, dark cave. The man introduced himself as Harold, a retired park ranger who had lived in the area for decades. He quickly went to work bandaging Jake's wound and offered them food and water. "You kids are lucky to be alive," Harold said, shaking his head. "Those caves are dangerous. Heard plenty of stories about folks going in and never coming out." Anna exchanged a glance with the others, the weight of their shared experience hanging in the air. "We're just glad to be out of there." As they rested, Harold shared tales of the cave's dark history. Legends of ancient rituals, lost explorers, and malevolent spirits had been passed down through generations. The stories mirrored their own harrowing journey, confirming that the horrors they faced were not just figments of their imagination. "You did the right thing, leaving that dagger behind," Harold said, his eyes serious. "Some things are best left undisturbed." The group spent the night in Harold's cabin, grateful for the shelter and warmth. As they sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting shadows on the walls, they reflected on their ordeal. "We survived because we worked together," Anna said, her voice steady. "But we need to learn from this. Some places are meant to stay hidden." Jake, his face relaxed now that his wound had been properly treated, nodded. "We'll carry this experience with us forever. It's a part of us now." Mia, her eyes distant, added, "We disturbed something ancient. We need to respect that. And each other." Tom, who had been silent for much of the evening, finally spoke. "I'm sorry for what happened, for the way I acted. I let my greed and fear get the better of me." Anna placed a hand on his shoulder. "We all made mistakes, Tom, but we survived. That's what matters." As the night wore on, they made plans to leave the forest and return to their lives. The road ahead would be long, but the bonds forged in the depths of the cave would help them heal and move forward. In the morning, Harold gave them directions to the nearest town and wished them well. Take care, and remember, some secrets are best left buried. They thanked him and set off, the sun rising on a new day. The journey back to civilization was arduous, but they moved with a sense of purpose and unity. The horrors of the cave had changed them, but they had emerged stronger, their spirits unbroken. As they walked, Anna couldn't help but think of the spirits they had encountered. They had sought retribution, but in the end, they had found peace. The cave system, with all its secrets and darkness, was behind them now. Or was it? As they reached the outskirts of the town, Anna glanced back at the forest. The whispers had ceased, but the memory of the haunted cave would stay with them forever. They had escaped the darkness, but its mark would remain, a reminder of the thin line between the known and the unknown. They had faced the abyss and survived. Now, it was time to heal and move forward, leaving the haunted cave and its restless spirits to rest in eternal peace.